Let's go Dolphins! The day has already started hot, and we have several changes in Mike McDaniel's team, and a last-minute signing caught the attention of fans and analysts. I'll tell you all about it, but first make sure you've already hit the like button, but only do so if you agree with me that the Miami Dolphins need a new quarterback. Yes, my friends, I believe it's time for Tua Tagovailoa to go. I know he helped us a lot in past seasons, but if we want to make it to the playoffs this new season, we need changes. If possible, write it like this: I want to see the Dolphins in the playoffs. Now, let's talk about signings. The Dolphins have officially signed safety Tua Tagovailoa to a 1-year, $4 million contract. Now, if you're a diehard fan, you know this is a name you didn't necessarily expect to hear, but this move says a lot about where the Dolphins are focusing their efforts as they shape the roster for next season. Let's break it down. First, Melifonwu is coming off his time with the Detroit Lions, where he showed promise, but this isn't necessarily a blockbuster signing, it's a depth change. The Dolphins love to run 3 safety sets, and adding a player like Melifonwu provides another piece to the puzzle. The details of the contract aren't entirely clear yet, which means we don't know exactly how much of that $4 million is guaranteed, but at the very least, it gives Miami another body in a position group that, let's be honest, looked dangerously thin. Speaking of depth, Miami also re-signed 2 players, Elijah Campbell and Quentin Bell. Campbell, a key special teamer, signed a 1-year, $1.9 million deal. If you've been paying attention, you know the Dolphins coaching staff, especially defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver, values his presence on the team. Bell, on the other hand, came back on a 1-year, $1.5 million deal after Miami opted not to tender him. That was an interesting move considering Bell played significant snaps last season, but instead of the expected $3.2 million tender, the Dolphins brought him back at essentially half that price. That's smart cap management, but it also suggests Miami isn't done making moves. Now, let's talk about what this means for the roster as a whole. If you look at the Dolphins' depth chart right now, there are still major gaps, particularly in the secondary and at linebacker. Safety, in particular, has been a concern, especially after losing Jevon Holland, who signed with the Giants for 3 years, $45 million. The Dolphins reportedly offered him $12 million per year, but he chose to move on. That leaves Miami in a tight spot, and while Melifonwu is a nice addition, he's not a one-for-one replacement for Holland. The team still has serious work to do to shore up that position. Looking at the available free agents, there are still some big names out there. Justin Simmons, Justin Reed, and Von Bell are all players that could make an impact if the Dolphins decide to go after them. The question is, will Miami invest in a top-tier safety, or are they banking on a combination of depth signings and the draft? Linebacker is another area of concern. Right now, the Dolphins essentially have Channing Tindall and Brooks as their only real options. That's not going to cut it in a division where you have to deal with offenses like the Bills and Chiefs. The free agent market at linebacker has also started to thin out, with names like Landon Roberts heading to the Raiders. This makes re-signing Trell Dotson a priority if Miami wants to maintain any kind of continuity in the middle of the defense. On the offensive side, things are looking a little more stable, but there are still question marks. Miami has been active in free agency, adding guard James Daniels, but the offensive line still needs work. Losing out on Will Fries, who signed with the Vikings for 5 years, $88 million, was a bit of a blow, but at that price, Miami was smart to pass. There are still viable options out there, including Brandon Scherff and Teven Jenkins, both of whom could help solidify the interior O-line. And then there's the edge rush situation. Right now, Miami is waiting on a decision from Joey Bosa. If they can land him, that immediately boosts their pass rush to another level. But if he chooses another team, Miami might have to pivot to cheaper rotational options like Azeez Ojulari or Zadarius Smith. At this point, it's clear the Dolphins aren't finished making moves. There are too many gaps, and if they want to be serious contenders next season, they need to make a few more key signings. The biggest question is, where do they go next? Do they spend big on a top-tier safety? Do they prioritize linebacker depth? Or do they focus on adding another key piece to the offensive line? Dolphins fans, what do you think? Are you happy with the signing of Tua Tagovailoa? Do you think Miami should have paid to keep Jevon Holland? And what's the next move the team needs to make? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and stay tuned because we'll have all the latest updates as they come in. One thing is crystal clear, this Dolphins roster is still a work in progress. While the signing of Tua Tagovailoa, along with the re-signings of Elijah Campbell and Quentin Bell, adds depth, it doesn't fully address the glaring holes Miami still has to fill. The front office is playing it smart, making calculated moves rather than overspending, but the reality is they can't afford to be passive much longer. let's dive deeper into what still needs to happen and where Miami might be looking next. Starting with the secondary, the Dolphins safety unit remains one of the weakest in the NFL. According to recent rankings, Miami scored just a 1 out of 10 in terms of safety depth, dead last in the league. That's not a number you want to see, especially in a division where you'll be facing elite quarterbacks week in and week out. Sure, Melifonwu is a capable player, but he's not the kind of difference maker who will dramatically change the defensive outlook. If Miami is serious about contending, they must go after a veteran safety who can lead the back end of the defense. Justin Simmons is still available, and while he won't come cheap, he's the type of player who instantly elevates the unit. Justin Reed is another solid option, and Von Bell could be a good budget-friendly alternative. The question is, will the Dolphins actually pull the trigger? Right now, it feels like they're trying to be overly cautious with their spending, but they risk missing out on the last few quality free agents. If they wait too long, they might be forced to rely on a draft pick to start immediately, a risky strategy when dealing with a complex position like safety. Now, let's shift to the linebacker situation, which isn't much better. As of now, Miami only has Channing Tindall and Brooks as their main linebackers. That's not enough, not even close. The Dolphins desperately need at least one more starter at the position. Trell Dodson remains a free agent target Miami could bring back, and if they don't, they will likely have to go linebacker heavy in the draft. Names like Jack Campbell have been floating around, and Miami could try to develop a rookie alongside Tindall, but ideally, they'd add a veteran presence before the draft arrives. Another position to monitor is the defensive line. Miami missed out on Jonathan Allen, who signed a 3-year, $60 million deal with the Vikings. At that price, it made sense for Miami to pass, but that still leaves them needing to find another presence up front. Levi Onwuzurike is still available and could be a great complement to Zach Sealer. Another option? Bringing back John Jenkins, who would provide solid depth and a strong locker room presence. Now, let's talk edge rushers. Joey Bosa is the name that has everyone waiting. If Miami lands him, their pass rush instantly goes up a level. But Bosa isn't cheap, and the longer this drags out, the more it feels like he's waiting for a higher offer. If Miami doesn't get him, they need to pivot quickly to guys like Azeez Ojulari, Zadarius Smith, or Matthew Judon, who could provide impact on shorter, team-friendly deals. On offense, the offensive line remains a priority. Miami did well to bring in James Daniels, but losing out on Will Fries showed that they aren't willing to overspend. The free agent market still has some solid options: Brendan Scherf, Tevin Jenkins, and Dalton Reisner, but time is running out. Miami will likely draft at least one guard, but adding a veteran before then would prevent them from being forced into a panic pick. So, what's the bottom line here? Miami has done a decent job of adding depth without overpaying, but the real work is still ahead. They must address safety, linebacker, and the defensive line before the draft. Otherwise, they risk going into the season with serious weaknesses that could cost them in big moments.